All right, Joe Prevedello here again with Chris Oliver from African Mahogany Australia. We're about 2 hours drive south of Darwin in a region called the Douglas Daly region, which is where African Mahogany manages all of its plantations, about 14,000 hectares in total. Chris is the operations manager here on site and has been for the last 4 years or so with African Mahogany. Chris, it's a fantastic operation. We've been looking around here today. You've got, different rotations of trees. It's a fascinating project with all sorts of different aspects to it. First of all, just give us a bit of an overview about the history of the project and where it's come to at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe. Yeah, as you said, we're based here in the Douglas Daly, so an area 200 k's south of Darwin, an area that's known pretty much for its agricultural production. And back in the 70s, the CSIRO did some initial developments looking at potential forest production out of Northern Australia. And it was identified that African Mahogany, Caia senegalensis, was one of those options. Through further development with the DPI of Queensland and the Northern Territory, some experimental areas were developed here in the Douglas Daly, and it was identified that yes, we do have great conditions for growing African mahogany. Since then, we've had investment from a couple of different sources through the history. Great Southern's first started out doing some investments with their MIS. Unfortunately, they folded, but luckily African Mahogany Australia was able to find other investors to continue on our project here in developing African mahogany.
So you've got now about 3 sort of major areas. You've got this area that we're at here in the north, you've got a central section and an area further down south, at all different growth phases of the project. So where we are at the moment are some of the oldest trees in this project. Yeah,
they're not actually the oldest, they're probably the fastest growing and bigger trees.
Bigger trees.
Yeah, so our first plantings were back in 2008, 2009 on our Stray Creek property, and that's a moderate site, whilst the area that we are here and further north, it was planted a little bit later, but we're having exceptional growth rates here. And then we have our third area right to the south, about 35 k's south from here, where we have mixed responses due to local changes in the soil types and also the climate. But that's an exciting and challenging project down there.
There's also some excellent collaboration with the local stock landholders here as well. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so prior to us developing these properties here, they were actually utilised for cattle production. And with the development of our plantations, we unfortunately had to move the cattle out due to potential for damage. But now the trees have got up to a stage where they're solid and high and tall enough, we're able to integrate the cattle production back onto our lands. So we've developed with a couple of local gestees a scheme of them bringing their cattle back in and helping, a combination of them helping us and we're helping them out by having opportunity for feed for the cattle, and at the same time they're helping us with controlling our weeds. And then they've also got the added bonus that the mahogany leaves are quite high in proteins and quite nutritious for the cattle. So come the dry season, the cattle end up eating the coppice from our thinning operation, and also some of the leaves that are on the heads as the trees are being thinned.
And Chris, just finally, you're just a few years off now, probably the full maturation cycle of some of the oldest trees here, some of the fastest growing trees. Then they'll be harvested and used for various types of high-grade products.
Yeah, that's right. So we're at the phase now of we're sort of looking at doing some market development, trying to see what we're getting out, the quality of our timber, and then identifying what our market is and where it's going to be localised. Are we going to be producing just for Australia, export to overseas? Are we going to be producing logs? Or hopefully what we're aiming to try to do is do some processing here in Australia before developing that and sending that into furniture making, architectural design and things along those lines.
Well, there you have it, just another one of the great forestry operations happening here in the Northern Territory.